All right. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Totally excited for this particular session. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Janine Yancey. I'm the founder of M-Train, and we're going to be talking about companies changing the world. And before we do that, super excited. This is very, very unique, special circumstance. I'm going to introduce everyone to M-Train's new president, Odessa Jenkins. Odessa, thank you so much for joining us, not only for the session, but to the company.
In general. Super excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Janine.
Oh, of course. Let me just give everyone a little bit of background on some of your past career experiences, and you can flesh it out, Odessa. And I'm just going to go ahead, and Odessa Jenkins goes by OJ, so I'm going to say OJ because it's easier. So OJ spent some time as the VP of Client Success at a corporate social responsibility tech-enabled company called Your Cause, and helped grow that company from about 40 employees to about 200, and ultimately helped the leadership team, merge into a much larger corporate social responsibility public company called Blackbaud. I think they're public or much larger company. And in addition, OJ is the founder of the Women's National Football Conference, and has got that off the ground and running. So OJ has been a longtime practitioner and activist in terms of culture, in terms of team building, obviously, and really pushing the needle for diversity, inclusion, and health, basically, generally speaking. So for OJ to join M-Train is such an ideal, combination. Because of her passion and her pursuits, as well as her business chops. So, I'll just kind of put out there, my business leader hat for people who don't know, the leaders who head up client success, that is a tricky function of any business, because they are kind of the hub, dealing with product, dealing with engineering, dealing with sales, dealing with marketing. So it does not surprise me that when I talked to OJ's last CEO that she was working with, Matt, he's like, okay, without her, we would not have gotten to where we got to. And she was pretty much, running this business at the end. So totally excited for M-Train to benefit from your past experiences, OJ.
Me too. I'm excited about it. I think that there's two reasons that I choose to join a team, right? Whether leading it or following in it, whatever role I take. And that's, who are the people that I'm going to be working with, and then what is our mission? And I think that I am obviously, as you said, an activist. I believe that in order for there to have change, that we need to be sometimes we need to be aggressive in what we believe in and our purpose and our passions. And you think the same. And that's one of the reasons why I love working with you. But I think there's also an amazing team, a dynamic product, like crazy expertise at M-Train that aligns closely to what I want to see. But more importantly, it's the mission. I believe that companies can change the world. I think the companies have. It's wild to me. I was sitting as I've taken the role, and I think about the impact of the culture that a company can have on a person, and then how that person can take it outside with them. And I think about people that are wearing their brands to the grocery store, or you see somebody in their company logo and the pride it takes and what that evokes from them and the public. And I think that all comes back around to, how do we treat each other? How are we handling each other as people in this business? Mm-hmm. And coming from CSR, coming from corporate social responsibility, it kind of melds very nicely, because it was the same way, right? It was, how are we showing up in the community? And then how is that impacting not just us as people, but our brand and our corporate culture? How is CSR a part of who we are as a business and the tools that we're using? And I think we're doing the same thing with M-Train as it relates to company culture, as it relates to learning, to training, to creating more respectful workplaces.
Yeah. So I totally agree with you. And I think for the benefit of the folks listening, let's just kind of touch upon real quickly. I mean, you and I have talked about this quite a bit, OJ, that companies, if you stop to look at it, I mean, companies really have changed societies, right? They have the power to change societies. I mean, you look at anything from transportation, from our workspace and how we, interact with workspaces, certainly with food. I mean, just, I'll be old enough to tell folks, like, we didn't always have gourmet coffee. I mean, just imagine that. Like, that was companies, my beloved Pete's, frankly, coming in, and changed like our whole kind of how we engage with food. And having spent my formative years at Berkeley and like the whole California cuisine, I mean, that was a company, that was Alice Waters and a restaurant that moved us into that direction. And so when you think about the power that a company has to actually, change how we interact and how we, do certain things, and then combine it with, okay, we're at this moment in time where the systemic inequities that have been around for a few generations longer, but just where we're all kind of acknowledging and aware of, okay, there's systemic inequities. There is a total opportunity here it's kind of a double impact. There's a total opportunity, obviously, for M-Train to move the needle, but really for all of the folks in our community and our clients and their part to move the needle. And I think that's what we want to chat about today.
For sure. I think talking about how the companies have a responsibility, and for anyone that thinks they don't have a responsibility to at least address societal issues, because I think there's some debate about whether or not companies have a responsibility to change societal issues. But we know in the way that some of these, rules, regs, and frankly, the way that people are showing up to work every day, that whether or not you think it's in your core mission to address a societal issue is actually not a choice at all, because people are coming into your business every single day from a workforce that is demanding that there's the way you operate in your core business, the way you show up in the day-to-day to your employees is in an inclusive way. It really isn't an option anymore. And so it's like some people aren't even saying, well, maybe we shouldn't explicitly talk about it anymore because it's a core competency, right? But yeah, I think that it's just a table stakes that we have to do now. It's no longer a want to do. The world isn't changing. The world has changed.
I love that. It's true. I mean, it's not an option. Very, very, very true. So I think what is helpful maybe to our audience and our community, OJ, is if you just, tell us you're a business leader, right? So you're not, I straddle the fence a little bit, like, right. So I come from a domain expert kind of perspective. I was I still am an employment lawyer, and HR and D&I. And I always kind of look at those folks as advisors, advising the business leaders, right? And then as I started M-Train, obviously I became a business leader myself. You are more squarely in the business leader perspective and persona. And it would be, I think, helpful to hear from your perspective, like, how have you experienced compliance training in the past? Because what we're going to talk about is, an opportunity to actually kind of start to integrate. It's all been siloed, to start to integrate some of the issues at hand with compliance training. So, what's been your experience?
So traditionally, in full disclosure, as a business leader, I've always kind of looked at compliance training as something that people like you told me to do, right? Like, and we say we did it, right? We check that box, and I hate to say check the box, but really, it's the truth. It's like these are the basic things that you need to have and do and align with, so that you can say you check the box. You can make your compliance folks happy, make your lawyers happy, and frankly, you can do what it takes, you would hope to not get sued.
Right.
And that was kind of the view. I never really saw these programs as something that would educate my employees or my workforce to go handle themselves better in the workplace, or frankly, go handle themselves better outside of the workplace as a representative of my company, and vice versa, have me handle that workforce better. And again, I never viewed that differently until coming here with you at M-Train to look at it to say, well, maybe the policies drive culture, and then culture drives education. Like it's different. But I've always just looked at this as our policies need to be memorized by the company. And when I ask you, you recite it like the school song. And if you do it, then we keep
on going. All right. I think I asked you that because I think that's pretty typical, right? Pretty common of most business executives. And I think for folks listening in right now who are most likely in the advisory roles and the HR role and the D&I role, I think it's one of those facts you have to process. I don't want to represent like this is, the common truth, but I think it's a common enough that you have to process it. And, I think what OJ and I are going to be kind of teasing out here is that we are perhaps, or I think more than perhaps, I think we're on an inflection point where it's time to look at this differently, right? And so what I've told certainly our whole team and OJ is, if you look at this as we have social issues that impact society, and when it impacts society, you have policies that flow from that, and then the policies turn into law, and then the law turns into compliance training. Case in point, very, very timely, and all of us, it's on all of our top of mind. Just last week, Senate passed a law, prohibiting hate against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. Well, so let's just connect all the dots. Within a few months, there was an increased awareness because it got into such a social impact. We were all looking at the hate against Asian Americans and grassroots mobilization, enabled by social media, frankly. It's in the Senate chambers in weeks. It used to be years. Now it's weeks. Okay, so, bipartisan passing of that bill within weeks, folks. Now we have a bill. And let me tell you, all of us compliance trainers are going to be, training on that bill because now it's a new policy, right? And I think that when you look at that, it's like, okay, are these things that you can just memorize? These are social issues. And treating them like they're policies to be memorized is so, I think, just a little simplistic. I mean, I always kind of analogize it to, teaching my two boys manners. I'm sorry. I mean, I wish I could just give them a one pager. Here, boys, here's your sheet on manners. But I mean, frankly, that takes years, frankly, of practice. And these social issues and navigating these social issues are complicated, and they also take years of practice. And so if we kind of switch our perspective as a community and start looking at these topics as, OJ, you called it competencies. I think that's right. And look at it as competencies. And then just in a very simplistic fashion, just to get us started, how would a high school teacher teach algebra, for example? I mean, would they just put out like a one pager and not get any feedback, not get any pulse points, not understand where their class is, and then move on and say, okay, curriculum's taught, we're good, all the kids are competent on algebra? I mean, it just doesn't kind of make sense to me.
It doesn't, but that's sort of been the standard in this industry as I've studied it. And it's one of the reasons I took this job. It's one of the reasons I'm so on fire about where this market is about to go, because we're going to drive it there. But it just doesn't make sense to me why this compliance training industry is so stuck and stagnant when we have such an opportunity to holistically impact an employee and how they experience their company. Like this check the box sort of action in something that's so serious that can impact people, brand, business in such a critical way is just being done with eyes closed is wild to me. Like, I don't understand why.
Yeah. And actually, you're probably a really good experience perspective, OJ, to share with our community and you and I were talking about this the other day, from a different business function, and the same evolution and journey that this other business function had is now here with these functions. So the function of customer service, right? It used to be that 1-800 number, and you could divide and conquer and keep it all kind of opaque. Walk us through that journey, and then let's talk about like how that applies in this current kind of ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that, there used to be a time when the world wasn't as connected, frankly, where you could look at different parts of your business in a cylinder, right? You could say the client is here, the end user is here. They don't talk to each other, they don't know each other, and they for sure aren't going to get on some internet and talk to each other about my brand. But today, we don't live in that world. We live in a world where people are mobilized. Your workplace is engaged and mobilized, whether you are aware of it or not. People are driving from the inside and out, how they see and how they feel and how they experience your business. So I think this concept that you can take, whether it be compliance training or any kind of action or engagement requirement to your employees, and think that it's not going to impact something else that you're trying to get from them, it's just not realistic anymore. It really isn't. And so I think because this is a function of not just the world being more woke.
Yeah.
Right? It's not woke. I just think that it's also more engaged. I can, with a smartphone now, just regardless of my title, I can, with a smartphone, change the way some of the world sees our company. Mm-hmm. And so when you get a chance to engage me, you need to engage me holistically now, and know that I have the ability to access where I didn't have the ability to access before.
Yeah, so totally agree. And I'll put my lawyer hat on and kind of share from that perspective. The compliance training industry really kind of got created and flowed from a lot of the employment laws and business compliance laws that were put on the books over the last 20 years, right? And in the last, 2 decades, really everyone was optimizing for claims and litigation, either regulatory through the Department of Justice or the EOC or the SEC or in Superior Court. And that's a much more measured process where you can get your legal team and your HR business partner team to really support and manage and control that process. And in that world, in that paradigm, having a compliance training that was really more form over function totally made sense. But we're not in that world anymore, as you've just explained. And so I kind of liken it to like, wow, there are a lot of people that are still in the horse and buggy stage, but meanwhile don't realize that the automobile's been created and people are zipping along on the roads, and we really are, both through technology as well as generational demographics. I mean, let's face it, the youngest generation, has a different perspective than prior generations, and I think it's all kind of combining and moving us towards more awareness and more mobilization for equity, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think when inclusion is action, it's not this like thought process, this philosophical thing that sits out there. Like, you actually have to mobilize and move people together and ideas together and get tools and things in place to be able to make that happen over a long-term period. And I think that what we're what we're saying and what we're doing in our products and our services that we're delivering is saying, listen, we are looking at this as a holistic approach to how we truly impact culture in your business. Because we can't hide it anymore.
Right.
It can't be done separately anymore.
Yeah, and I think so. Once folks, kind of get to the point where this is, kind of thinking through that this is really a competency to learn and to develop, then I think what we're advocating here is it really then kind of triggers stakeholders getting their L&D professionals more tightly involved and looking at programs and solutions from an L&D learning and development perspective on, okay, what's the instructional design? How are we measuring this? How are we tracking skill development, quarter over quarter, year over year? And OJ, I'm sure you can appreciate this as a business leader. What's the plan and what are the KPIs to get us to culture outcomes that we're all looking at? And I just think that's a brand new paradigm. People have not been looking at it this way.
Yeah, especially when it comes to skills, right? I think people are looking at it and trying to determine how many of what do we have. It's so much math right now than it is really analytics. And I think as business leaders, we know better. We know better to not just look at summary numbers. We need to look at how that data is impacting the outcomes that we want to have. And so to your point, how are we getting to the skills that we want to develop? How are the things that we are asking of our employees, the content that we are putting in front of them, driving us toward our desired outcomes? And frankly, our desired outcomes have nothing to do with how many of X we have doing a job. It's frankly, how are we really diverse in our culture? How are we really showing that we're inclusive in the way we build, in the way we sell, in the way we service, frankly, in our language? Mm-hmm. So I think that all comes down to having better insights, which it's why I'm proud to be a part of the M-Train family.
Oh, thank you. And I'm excited at our opportunity to really support and extend the efforts of all of our clients and community, members, because, just as like looping this back to our beginning kind of statement that companies really have the ability and opportunity to change and influence a lot of people and a big portion of society. And if we think about, companies using, the existing path and existing budget of compliance training as one tool in their tool chest, out of a whole program to address social justice issues and building competency, building skills, then just think about that outcome, right? The outcome for their workforce, and their workforce then goes on, obviously, and transitions to other workforces. And you start to, like, in a scalable way, lift everyone up to a new place. So I think that's what we're talking about. And I think from my perspective, if D&I and HR leaders and compliance leaders can start to think about really using current events and the different issues that are the issues that we're all, kind of navigating today and addressing them in programs and giving people, the tools to develop skills and monitoring it over time and coming back to it, that's how we're going to make an impact.
Yeah, and I think as a business leader, you're always thinking about how do I benchmark this against what great looks like, right? Because when you step up as a leader, you really no one's trying to fail.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Everyone's trying to exceed the expectation. And so I think that the way we're moving in this market is when you look at your compliance training, it is another opportunity for you to not just poll an employee, but to actually educate them and to give them tools and skills. And you want to come back and benchmark those tools and skills about what good looks like for your culture. It won't all be the same, but using the right tools can get you there.
Exactly right. I think this is probably a good place to wrap it up. So I think what we're saying, first of all, want to welcome OJ into our team and to be our fearless leader here, and as well as the M-Train community. This is super exciting. And then also to encourage everyone to start thinking about existing budgets and programs, typically within the compliance area, as an opportunity and as a path to start educating and building skills within the workforce to get us to these better culture outcomes.
Absolutely. Yeah, this needs to be in the veins of everything you do. Every piece of technology you choose needs to drive you towards your desired outcome for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Exactly. Well said. Well, with that, thank you, everyone. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Until next time. And OJ, totally excited to have you on board.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Let's go do this.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.